It was not the kind of life Lena had planned for herself. She used to have a plan. Back when she was 19 and full of something that felt like certainty, she had mapped it all out on a piece of notebook paper. The nursing degree, the apartment with the big windows, the job at a real hospital, where people would call her by her name and mean it with respect. She had taped that piece of paper to the wall above her bed in the room she shared with her younger sister, and every morning she would look at it, before her feet even hit the floor. That paper was gone now. The apartment with the big windows was someone else's dream, and the job that was supposed to be the beginning, was the reason she was standing outside the Hargrove Grand Hotel on a Tuesday morning in October, with a cardboard box in her arms and nowhere particular to go. She had worked housekeeping at the Hargrove for 3 years. 3 years of folding towels into swans, of pressing pillowcases until they lay flat as envelopes, of scrubbing marble floors that reflected her face back at her like a warning. She was not management. She was not the kind of staff that guests remembered by name. But she knew every corner of that hotel, every squeaky hinge, every elevator that ran a half-second slow. She knew the building the way you only know a place when you've cleaned up after it. The morning it happened had started the same as every other morning. Lena clocked in at 6:15, pulled her cart from the supply room, and started on the 14th floor. She was working her way toward room 1408. She always saved it for last because the guest there, whoever it was that week, always left the room in the worst state when she heard it. A sound from inside 1412. Not the television, not the shower. Something different. A heavy thud and then silence and then a sound she could only describe later as the sound of a person trying very hard not to disappear. Lena stood in the hallway for 3 seconds. She counted them. 1, 2, 3. Then she knocked. Nothing. She knocked again and called out. The way they were trained. Housekeeping. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Still, nothing but the sound again, that labored, desperate breathing, leaking under the door like smoke. She used her key card. The man was on the floor near the bed. He had knocked the phone off the nightstand when he fell, and it was dangling by its cord, the receiver spinning slowly like it was looking for someone to talk to. He was older, maybe 60, heavy-set, wearing a white dress shirt that had come half untucked. His face was the color of old ash. His lips were moving, but nothing was coming out that sounded like words. Lena did not stop to think about protocol. She crossed the room in 4 steps and knelt beside him. She had taken a CPR course 2 years ago, required training for all hotel staff, the kind most people forgot about the moment they left the room. She had not forgotten. She checked his airway, tilted his head back gently, and when she felt his pulse, weak and stuttering like a candle in the wind, she positioned her hands and began compressions. She counted out loud. She didn't know why. Maybe so she wouldn't panic. Maybe so he would hear her voice and understand that someone was there, that he was not alone in that room. Somewhere in the middle of the count, she called out into the hallway for anyone who could hear her to call 911. A passing guest did. The paramedics arrived in 7 minutes. By the time they came through the door, the man's color had begun to return, and he was breathing on his own. Not well, but enough. One of the paramedics looked at her and said, "You did good." She thought at the time that was enough. It was not enough. Mr. Calloway, the hotel's general manager, called her into his office that same afternoon. He had the kind of office that was meant to make you feel small. Dark wood paneling, a desk the size of a dining table, framed photos of himself shaking hands with people who mattered. He sat behind that desk with his hands folded and his expression arranged into something that was trying to look regretful and landing closer to impatient. He told her that she had violated guest privacy, that she had entered a room under circumstances that, according to the hotel's liability policy, required immediate supervisor notification before any intervention. He told her that she had practiced something resembling medical care without any certification on file with the hotel. He used the word liability 4 times in 6 minutes. She counted those too, but he was dying, Lena said. Mr. Calloway unfolded his hands and refolded them the other way. That may be, but there are procedures, Lena. Procedures that exist to protect both guests and staff. He would have been dead by the time I found a supervisor. That's not something we can know. She looked at him for a long moment. I know. He slid a paper across the desk. Her termination notice, already printed, already signed. She picked up the paper. She read it. She set it back down. She thought about that notebook paper she had taped above her bed when she was 19. And she thought about how certainty has a way of curing itself eventually, like a fever that breaks and leaves you different than you were before. She said, "Okay." She cleaned out her locker. She carried her things in a bag because she didn't have a box. She walked out through the service entrance because she didn't want to go through the lobby, didn't want the other staff to see her face until she had figured out what expression to put on it. Outside, she sat on a concrete barrier in the parking structure for a long time without moving. Then she called her mother. Mama Claudette answered on the second ring, the way she always did, as if she had been waiting. Lena didn't say much, just that she'd lost the job. Her mother was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Come home, baby, just come home tonight." Lena went home. The weeks after that moved the way bad weeks do, slowly in the living and quickly in the memory. She applied to 11 hotels in the first 2 weeks. 3 responded. 2 said they were fully staffed. 1 scheduled an interview and then cancelled it the morning of without explanation. She applied to cleaning services, to office buildings, to a hospital laundry facility, 30 minutes from her apartment. She got a part-time position at a dry cleaner on Maple Street, 3 days a week, $7 more than minimum wage. She took it. She did not tell people what had happened at the Hargrove. Not exactly. When they asked why she'd left, she said it hadn't worked out, which was true, and she moved past it quickly, which was also a kind of survival. What she did not say was that some mornings she woke up and felt the ghost of those compressions in her hands. The count, the rhythm, the terrible intimacy of trying to hold another person's life inside your palms. She did not say that she had looked up the man from room 1412, the way you look someone up when you need to know the ending of a story. She found his name in a brief local news mention, a note about a medical incident at the Hargrove Grand. The guest stabilized and discharged. No name given, just a guest. Just a story that had already moved on without her. She tried not to be bitter about it. Some days she succeeded. Mama Claudette watched her daughter the way mothers watch their children when they're hurting, quietly, from angles, never straight on so as not to spook them. She left food in containers on Lena's counter. She texted in the mornings, just a single word sometimes, morning, or praying, or just a heart, red and small on the screen. Lena always wrote back. She understood that the texts were her mother's way of counting, making sure she was still there. 2 months into it, Lena picked up a second job at a catering company that handled corporate events. The pay was inconsistent, but the work was real. Setting up, breaking down, carrying things from one end of a room to the other, while people in expensive clothes moved around her like she was part of the furniture. She didn't mind it. She had learned early how to be invisible when she needed to be. It was at one of these events, a dinner for some financial firm in a rented ballroom downtown, that she saw him again. She almost didn't recognize him at first. He was upright now, of course, dressed in a charcoal suit that fit the way expensive suits fit, like it had been born on him. His hair was silver at the temples. He was standing near the far end of the room talking to 2 other men, and he was laughing at something, and his laugh was the kind that carried. But it was the way he moved his right hand when he talked. A particular gesture, a small repetitive motion like he was sorting through invisible files, that made something click in Lena's memory. She had seen that hand on a hotel room floor. She had held that wrist to check a pulse. She looked away quickly. She focused on the table she was setting, glasses at the right distance from the edge, napkins folded correctly. She had a job to do and she did it. She told herself it didn't matter, that she wasn't going to walk up to a man in a charcoal suit at a corporate dinner and say, "Excuse me, I think I kept your heart beating once." That was not a sentence that belonged in her mouth in this room. She was the help. That was the dynamic. She understood it, and she had made her peace with it. But then she was passing behind him with a tray, and he turned at the wrong moment, and their eyes met. He looked at her the way people look at something they almost remember. His brow pulled together slightly. His conversation with the other men slowed. She kept walking. She was in the back hallway stacking empty trays when she heard footsteps behind her, and she turned, and it was him. Standing in the service corridor in his charcoal suit, looking slightly out of place among the stacked folding chairs and catering carts. "Excuse me," he said. She waited. "I know this is going to sound strange." He paused, as if deciding how to continue. "Were you about 2 months ago? Were you working at the Hargrove Grand Hotel?" She felt something move through her chest. Not quite relief, not quite dread, something in between. "Yes," she said, "I was." He nodded slowly, like he had suspected it but needed the confirmation to make it real. "Room 1412, he said. "Yes." He looked at her for a long moment. He had the kind of face that had probably been handsome when he was younger and had since become something better. Interesting. A face that had been through things and come out knowing more than it had gone in with. "My name is Mr. Whitfield," he said. "Randolph Whitfield." "Lena," she said. He extended his hand. She shook it, still holding the tray under her other arm, still wearing her catering uniform. There was something surreal about it, shaking hands with a man whose pulse she had once held in her fingers like something borrowed. "They told me the paramedics were the ones who—" He stopped. "But one of the paramedics told me." He said someone had already started compressions, that if it had taken even another few minutes, he stopped again. "You don't have to," Lena said. "I do," he said. "I've thought about it every day since. I asked the hotel who the staff member was. They told me the employee in question was no longer with the company. Something passed through her expression that she couldn't fully control. He caught it. "They fired you," he said. It was not a question. "Violated protocol," she said, and she meant it to come out neutral, and it almost did. His jaw set. "For saving my life. For entering a guest room under circumstances that required supervisor notification." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "I'm sorry." She didn't know what to do with that. She had not expected an apology. She had not known she needed one until he said it. And then something inside her cracked open, just slight. A window being raised to let air in after a very long winter. "It worked out," she said, which was only partially true. "Did it?" She didn't answer that. He asked if she had time to talk. She told him she was working. He said of course he understood, and he asked if he could give her his card, and she said yes, more out of habit than intention. She did not call the number on the card that night. She put it on her kitchen counter and looked at it while she ate leftovers from a pot of soup Mama Claudette had brought over. She looked at it the next morning. She picked it up and put it down 3 times. On the 3rd day she called. His assistant answered. She gave her name. She was put on hold for less than a minute, and then his voice was on the line, and he said, "Lena, thank you for calling." He told her that he had a small foundation, privately run, focused on workforce development and vocational training. He had a director of operations position that had been open for 6 weeks. He wanted to know if she would be interested in meeting to discuss it. She almost said no. The instinct was so strong it surprised her. That defensive reflex of someone who has learned that good things offered quickly usually cost more than the price listed. She had been fired for doing right. She had been let go and moved past and reduced to a footnote in someone else's story. She had learned, in the slow and grinding way that life teaches, to be careful with hope. But she thought about Mama Claudette texting her single words in the morning. She thought about the count she had kept out loud in room 1412, and the paramedic who said you did good, and the truth that she had never once doubted that going through that door was the right thing to do. She said, "Yes, I'd like to meet." The meeting lasted 2 hours. He asked her questions that had nothing to do with her resume, what she thought made a community strong, how she had navigated the months since the hotel, what she believed about second chances. She answered honestly. She did not try to impress him. She was too tired for performance and too proud for desperation. He offered her the position at the end of the meeting, before she had even made it back to her car. She sat in the parking lot for a long time, phone in her hand, the offer still warm in the air around her. Then she called Mama Claudette. Her mother answered on the second ring, the way she always did, as if she had been waiting. "Mama," Lena said, "I think something good just happened." Her mother was quiet for a moment, then, "Tell me." So Lena told her, all of it. The meeting, the questions, the offer, the way Mr. Whitfield had looked at her when he said, "I've thought about it every day since, the strange and tender absurdity of being found by the person you had once tried to keep alive." She talked for a long time. Her mother listened the whole way through, the way mothers listen when they know that sometimes what a person needs is not advice, but a witness. When Lena finished, Mama Claudette said, "Baby, I told you. You told me what? That the ground holds. Even when you can't feel it, it holds." Lena leaned her head back against the seat. Outside the parking lot, the city was doing what cities do, moving, loud, indifferent. But inside that car, in that particular moment, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. Not certainty. She was done with certainty. It was something quieter than that and more durable. She felt like herself again. She started at the foundation on the first Monday of December. Her office was small and the work was hard, and sometimes she stayed late going over program budgets and community outreach plans until the cleaning staff knocked on her door to let her know they needed to vacuum. She always stepped out into the hallway to let them work. She always thanked them by name. She did not forget where she had come from. She was not built to forget. The hotel uniform was gone, but the knowledge of what it meant to be the kind of person that a building runs on. Invisible, essential, expendable until suddenly you aren't. That knowledge lived in her hands and her spine, and the particular way she listened when someone spoke to her like they expected not to be heard. Mr. Whitfield stopped by her office once a week, not to check on her work. Her work was good and they both knew it, but just to talk. He was quiet and direct, and he treated her opinions the way people treat something they've paid a fair price for. He asked. He listened. He thought before he spoke. Once, about 2 months in, he said, "Can I ask you something personal?" She said yes. "When you went through that door," he said, "were you scared?" She thought about it. The honest answer was not simple. "Not at first," she said. "At first I just moved. The scared part came after, when I was sitting in the parking lot outside the hotel with my things." He nodded. "That's usually how it works," he said. "The courage comes before the fear does." She thought about that for a long time after he left. She thought about the 19-year-old girl with the notebook paper on the wall, and the plan that had crumbled, and the new plan that had no paper yet, no wall, just the ongoing work of getting up every morning and doing the next right thing. She thought about how the good you put into the world does not always come back to you in the shape you expected. Sometimes it comes back bent, delayed, wrapped in something unrecognizable. Sometimes you have to go through a lot of wrong rooms before you find the one you were always supposed to be in. But it comes back. She believed that now. Not in the easy, untested way of someone who has never had cause to doubt it, but in the deep and quiet way of someone who has sat in the dark with the question and waited for morning. It always comes back.